Have you ever seen a black and white film that looks like this out of the canister? Well, today we are going to be talking about low ISO film from FPP, which does indeed come out bright yellow, but the images are black and white as normal. If you're interested in hearing a little bit more about this crazy film, then this is the right video for you. I'm Paul Mackay from Analogue Wonderland and welcome to the channel. Quick one before we get started, if you like film photography and want to see more videos like this one, film reviews, tips and tricks, that kind of thing, then please do make sure you're subscribed to our channel and notifications are turned on. Thank you so much. Low ISO black and white negative film from FPP is, as the name suggests, a low ISO film. ISO 6, in fact, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means for how you use it in your 35mm film camera. Before we do, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on FPP. We've talked about them before on this channel with Let It Snow, the Christmas film that we talked about in November, December. FPP stands for Film Photography Project. They are a US-based company who have several different arms to what they do, all of which is about supporting film photography. The one that most people tend to learn about first, especially here in Europe, is the podcast, the Film Photography Podcast, that has been running for over 10 years, so they can legitimately claim that they were doing it before podcasts were cool. The sound production is fantastic. They have a lot of fun on there, and there is 10 years of content to go back and enjoy, so please do check that out if you're interested. That's one side, and that has spawned a YouTube channel, a series of articles, blogs, tips, a brilliant resource for film photographers that you can find on filmphotographyproject.com. They also have on there a camera donation program where they accept cameras and other equipment from people who are no longer using them. They check them over, they fix them, they refurb them, and then they recycle them back into the community via schools, educational institutions, so that the next generation of film photographers is being taught by equipment that would no longer be used or needed or wanted in its original place. So an incredible job of turning things around. They have a retail arm as well where they sell brands like Ilford, Kodak, Fuji, etc. into the North American market. They're very passionate about movie film, with Mike Rasso, the main guy behind the scene, the brains behind the operation, having a long background in movie production. They scan and process analog movie films. They supply a lot of our slightly more niche formats of movie film as well here. And then in their spare time, they hand roll and produce 35mm films that are generally a little bit weird, wonderful, wacky, interesting in some way or other, that we distribute for them here in the UK. And today we're going to talk about one of those. Now, I've been wanting to put in one of FPP's crazy films, and by the way, I put the Let It Snow under normal. It's a black and white, it's ISO 100, that's pretty straightforward. I wanted to put one of their slightly crazier films in for a while, and I think we've now warmed up enough, all of us, especially the ones who have subscribed for a few months. We're warmed up, we're ready to try something a little bit crazy, and this is a little bit crazy. It's yellow. This is because of a yellow dye that is used in the production of this film. When it is developed and the dye is washed out, the base is actually clear, transparent, which gives you a clue as to some of its original intent. This film has originally produced for replicating via contact printing movie film. So it would be designed for you shoot a film on black and white negative, and then you contact print it on this emulsion to get a like for like positive film that you can then project or scan in nowadays world as well. So the most important thing for this film was that it has tiny grain. It shouldn't be adding anything extra to the image than was already there in the original shot, which leads it to being ISO 6, i.e. extremely insensitive in general, so that the grain can be very fine. You need a lot of light on it to produce those perfect contact prints. And also, I'm told that the yellow dye is very important. It adds the sharpness to the film to make sure that the maximum amount of detail is being transferred from that original movie onto the positive that can then be projected on in front of adoring crowds enjoying the masterpiece. So that's its background. It is also, as a nice little extra taster, blue sensitive orthochromatic, which means that you should shoot it outdoors or in daylight balanced light. Do not shoot it under tungsten light or with a yellow filter, as it will fail to pick up a large part of the image, just for fun. Good reminder though, it's yellow, so don't shoot yellow things with it. It'll just get absorbed, not recorded. There we go. That's all being said. Now the good news is it's developed as a normal black and white film. The lab might be a little bit confused, but do not worry. We have some directions on timing and temperatures on the site that you can look up or share with them, but it's developed now as black and white negative. ISO 6. So for those of us who have shot low ISOs before, immediately you'll be thinking either bright light, wide open apertures, long exposure times, or frankly, all three. The easiest one to do, especially when it's winter, you can't really control the light massively unless perhaps you have studio lights and you whack up the intensity hugely, or you're shooting under really strong lamps, bulbs, something still life. Can't really do much there. You're unlikely to find suddenly another 5 or 6 stops on the lens, so really what you're looking at here is long exposure photography. This means that your tripod is going to be your friend when you're out and about. Now of course if you don't have a tripod, that's not a problem. You can lean a camera on a shelf, on a wall, on the edge of a bridge, on a bench, whatever you are doing, outside or inside, to make sure that you have those really long shutter speeds. You'll be needing probably bulb mode. Bulb meaning that you hold the shutter open for as long as the button is pressed, rather than it cutting off after a 30th of a second or a 60th or whatever it is. But how long do you leave it for? Now this is where it's going to become a little bit more tricky. There are some Canon and Nikon automatic cameras that do have ISO 6 as an option. More common, especially with older model, is ISO 25. ISO 25 is 2 stops more open than ISO 6. So you would meter for ISO 25, then open up your shutter 2 more stops, or double the shutter speed twice. Or if this is not an option, or you're shooting with a manual camera or something that doesn't have any kind of metering, then my basic premise is use an app on your smartphone. There are some fantastic apps, they're not very expensive. It is worth spending a couple of quid to get a good one. I'll link below the one that I use all the time, and this will allow you to get a very good guide for how long it should be open, but expect this to be a matter of seconds rather than tenths or hundredths of a second as you will normally be used to. Now, all that being said, and of course, do please drop comments below if you have shot a lot of low ISO, long exposure things before. Pinhole photographers might be our friends here. They're very used to this kind of calculation. Please do drop any hints, tips, top tricks to get the best out of situations like this. All that technical stuff aside, what can you expect from this film? As I mentioned earlier, really sharp detail, really fine grain. This is designed, remember, as a copy film, so it is trying to replicate exactly what's there without adding any artifacts in from the emulsion itself. So if you have this film, if you have it in a camera, on a tripod, with a mid aperture, on a nice day, you are going to get absolutely pin sharp photographs back from anything that is stationary. Now of course if there's a little bit of wind you're going to get a slight movement in trees. If you take a portrait over 30 seconds you can get a slight blurring, but have fun with that, play with it. You know that buildings are going to stay still, you know that parked cars are going to stay still, anything like that. So if you can set up with a tripod or just balanced on a wall or a bench or a windowsill or whatever, making sure that you can play with that long exposure and then enjoy things like the blur of passing cars or passing people or the wind in the trees or clouds moving across. This is where you can be really creative, knowing that the film itself will deliver this really pin sharp detail on anything that is stationary. From my point of view, I think normally what I would be doing with this is I'll be taking it into a city centre, setting up a tripod in front of maybe a lovely building and then enjoying the flow of a crowd in front of it. If you're watching this video post-COVID, then brilliant, that's perfect, go for it. If you're watching it during COVID, which is when I am filming this, then that of course is not possible, but the premise can still be held. Maybe rather than a dramatic building in a town centre with crowds in front, I'm going to go more for a park view where maybe there might be some dogs running around in the distance, maybe a couple of people walking across, and you'll still get some blur. It won't be as dramatic, but it should be quite atmospheric, especially if I can get a bit of movement in the trees, a bit of movement in the clouds above, the really strong detail from a couple of hero objects within it. So I think I'm going to be looking for a really strong, stable shape surrounded by a bit of movement. That's the goal. and I think we're just going to be a little bit creative about finding it. I probably will wait for a sunny day because I think there will already be enough challenges at ISO 6 without also adding heavy light or dim light on top of it. Let's try and get the bright sunlight and then work with what's still going to be a wonderfully long exposure. WonderBox subscribers, I hope that has cleared it up. I hope you weren't too concerned when you saw the yellow. I hope you weren't too worried when you saw ISO 6. This is a really, really lovely film. It is possible to get portraits out of it as well. You can see we don't have many examples because this is a relatively new option in 35mm, but I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys create, and hopefully there'll be a lot more sample photos available on the website, or if you process them, then drop the link below so people can see, understand, and work through what this film can deliver. I'm really, really excited about this one. This is the first one where we've gone wildly out of the normal 100 to 400, 800 range. And what it really opens up is that opportunity to be really creative with wide open apertures, long exposure times, or as I say, a mix of both. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you think when you've done it. If you do have any tips, as I said before, if you've shot this kind of film before, please do share with the community what you found worked, what didn't. If you have any links to Flickr albums or Instagram, please do drop them in below. I'll have a look through and really enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.